Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs? Welcome on into the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast, episode 2 of the week, as we cruise to the end of June and we get ready for training camps in July and all that fun stuff. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. Poppin' Rick.
What's going on?
Me and Rick currently are surfing DoorDash for dinner.
Yeah, it shows you how much we really want to cook right now.
I'm freaking hungry. I mean, I ain't even heard half of these freaking.
By the time we're done with this, it's going to be like past 7 o'clock, and I don't want to cook.
And I haven't even
I got work to do.
I haven't even freaking ordered anything. So there's that.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, I forgot that there's an Applebee's near me. Sounds like a
Applebee's. Oh boy.
Sounds like a long night. But anyway, welcome to the Fantasy Jameis Fantasy Football Podcast. Today we're going to talk about some QB sleepers as we inch our way through the offseason and get closer to the regular season of the NFL. And we get you prepared for your drafts coming up in August. We're going to talk about just 3 quarterbacks that we think you want to take a look at as you prepare for your drafts. And we'll explain why these players are here, what they're doing here, and then what we consider a QB sleeper to be, because there's a lot of guys that we also consider breakouts. So we'll explain that in a second. But anyway, we're going to talk about the top 3 QB sleepers. Before we do that, check out our website, fantasyjameis.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platform, please leave a review and then share this podcast with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like, and comment down below any questions you may have pertaining to the pod. Or if you want to ask us questions about ourselves, I mean, feel free. I don't know if Rick wants to answer any questions.
Maybe, we'll see.
He's single and ready to mingle, so.
I don't know about those kind of questions, but.
All right, let's jump into our QB sleepers for the 2022 season. And QB sleepers is a little bit more difficult of an area to project, because it's. I feel like the players that we would consider QB sleepers would also be considered breakouts in some ways. So
yeah.
me and Rick tried to stray away from that thinking and think about some quarterbacks that could be guys that are, they're getting slept on right now, that a lot of people are considering, not to be breakouts and not even to be guys that, they want to draft. I know on this show, we consistently draft Trey Lance and Justin Fields. And those guys have been, I think, what we would consider our breakout quarterbacks, right?
Yeah. I mean, I could, for example, Morgan's not high on this player, but I think he's kind of getting slept on and he's not on our list.
Yeah.
But like Derek Carr, he's not someone who's going to break out.
Yeah.
But he's getting drafted pretty late, and I think he's a good quarterback sleeper because I think he's going to be a starting caliber quarterback on a week-to-week basis. But someone like that. So we're not looking at guys who are, top 5, got to be top 5 quarterbacks. They're just players that could have good seasons and are really just getting slept on, and they're going like undrafted.
Yeah. I mean, Carr's not a bad one.
Yeah.
But so yeah, we're gonna discuss all of those things for the QB sleepers. So these are guys that, like Rick said, people may be falling asleep at the wheel when it comes to some of these quarterbacks. So let's jump in with the first one, and that is a man by the name of Jameis the Famous Winston. And I think Jameis was a breakout last year for us. Is that correct?
He might have been.
I can't remember. But anyway, he came into the season. He actually, first game of the year, it was kind of weird. He threw 5 touchdowns and 148 passing yards. And I was like, 29 fantasy points, and he didn't get any passing yards. And that trend didn't really change through the first couple weeks of the season, because In week 1, he had 148. Week 2, he had 111. Week 3, he had 128. Week 4,
Yuck.
he had 226. Week 5, he had 279, and then he had 222 in week 7 against Seattle. And there were some games where he threw a lot of touchdowns. There were some games where he didn't. The plus side of this is that he threw 13, 14 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions in the games that he played.
Yeah.
I think the lack of passing yards had more to do with the fact that they just didn't have anyone to throw the ball to. And so they went.
I mean, a lot of those touchdowns were like created by the defense, and then it was just you had the ball in the red zone.
So I think, the lack of passing yards for him is not really a large concern. Attempts I would be more concerned about, but that kind of started to straighten itself out towards the midway point in week 5 and 7. He was at 30 to 35 passing attempts, but his completion percentage was not great. It's like me and Madden, dude.
Yeah.
But anyway,
it's just the Winston career.
So for Jameis Winston, he always has kind of been a decent fantasy quarterback when he has started. He's been a guy that, you could throw out there on a week-to-week basis. He had a top 5 performance and a top 4 performance that in last season. He also had a QB 16 performance, which was a QB 2. So if you're in a 2-quarterback league, he was actually decent there. But this is a guy that is falling now into the conversation. And I'm trying to find some ADP here, but
I think he was like QB 19 or 20.
Yeah, he's like QB 19, QB 20, and his ADP right now is currently at. Where are you, Jameis? Where are you? I need to have this information ready. 167. So he's basically at this point, for the most part, going undrafted. And so I think it's a guy that you could draft late in your draft, similar to what I did in the last mock draft, and have a guy, at least for week 1, that can perform at a decent level, get you 20 fantasy points on a given week at the quarterback position. I don't think he is a breakout guy that's going to end up being a top 5 quarterback this year. I don't even think he's going to get close to that. But if they have Alvin Kamara, they have Chris Olave, who they just drafted, and they have Michael Thomas out there with. They don't have Cole Kmet. That's the Bears. Who's the tight end that they had?
Adam Troutman, I think.
Yeah, Troutman. So they got some pieces there that they can play with if Thomas is on the field.
Yeah.
If he's not, then I don't think they're going to be as bad receiving core wise as they were last year.
Because they have Jarvis. I don't know. Did you say Jarvis Landry?
I haven't said Jarvis Landry yet. No.
Yeah, so there's him as well that they signed.
Yeah, so there's some improvements there that they made to the receiving core and areas where they can improve and move forward. So I like Jameis Winston's upside, to say the least, of opportunity that he has, at least to have success. So, I mean, there's a lot of different variables that you can talk about. Rick, what are your thoughts on Jameis Winston?
No, yeah, I agree. You said Winston's always been a pretty good fantasy quarterback, and that's true even when he has struggled, like his last year in Tampa with his 30 for 30 season, which is not very good if you think about it at all.
Not really.
But for fantasy purposes, it was great. He threw 5,000 yards, 33 touchdowns. So that's all you really care about in fantasy. The interceptions hurt, but not enough where it matters if you're throwing for that many yards and that many touchdowns.
Right.
And he also had some rushing. I don't think he's going to really rush in New Orleans, but Winston's biggest faults are his turnovers and his completion percentage. And those things really, completion percentage especially doesn't matter. So as long as he kind of controls the turnovers, he'll be fine. And this Saints offense is a lot better than it was last year, in my opinion. I think I've said that before on the show.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, Michael Thomas potentially coming back, Chris Olave, Jarvis Landry, Alvin Kamara. Like, they have a lot of pieces there on the offense. The offensive line is not even that bad. So he's got a lot to work with. And if you look at the quarterbacks in his range, like Ryan Tannehill, Matt Ryan, Mac Jones, like, I think Winston for fantasy purposes is a step above all of those guys.
Yeah.
And he should be in the same tier as guys like Kirk Cousins and Tua and those other guys.
Right.
And I probably, considering where they're going, I would take Winston over them. So I think Winston's getting slept on. He's solid value.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, it definitely goes to approach too when it comes to drafting. Like Rick last draft drafted Kyler Murray in the 6th, 7th round in our last mock draft.
I think so, yeah.
And then there's guys that me who forgot to take a quarterback, and Rick sniped me on Justin Fields because I wasn't paying attention. But, literally on a podcast about fantasy football, I'm not paying attention to mock draft. That's great. But anyway, but it's like if you prefer to take quarterbacks late and okay, you know what, I'm going to get a consistent quarterback like Jameis Winston in rounds, 14 or 15, and I can just draft my team, then I would do that. You know what I mean? Like, so Winston's a good player. Like I said, I do not think that he's going to be like this, breakout superstar quarterback all of a sudden. Like, we know what he is. We know what he can provide. If he has a good season, then, he's going to be a decent fantasy quarterback. And if you're into streaming and you're into that biz, it's a good start for him, at least to have a base structure on your roster. So let's move on to the next guy. A little bit more. These next two guys are a little bit more interesting, but it's Trevor Lawrence is the second one. And Rick, I want to get your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence and what the situation is, because if he had some stars, he had some wide receivers to throw the ball to,
much easier.
I think he would be a breakout. He would be in the conversation with Fields and Lance, but because he doesn't have that, and Fields doesn't even have that, but at least he's got his rushing. So give me your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, Lawrence had a really bad year last year. Urban Meyer definitely had something to do with it. The weapons, whole situation was awful. But here going into year 2, we have a lot of expectations for Lawrence. And the situation did get better. They signed Christian Kirk. They brought in Zay Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Doug Peterson is now the head coach, which I think is the best move for Trevor Lawrence. And they also have Travis Etienne coming back. So his situation, I don't think is that great, to be honest. It might be the worst still of the 5 rookie quarterbacks from last year. So of the big 5 second-year quarterbacks, I think Trevor Lawrence's situation might be the worst.
Yeah.
But he was the best prospect coming out. So if you believe in the player that is Trevor Lawrence and what he's capable of doing, then he should be able to overcome the situation, even though it's bad. He might not be an MVP. He might not be an all-pro quarterback.
Yeah.
But you should see big leaps and big improvements in year 2, even with all that being said. Christian Kirk is not a great receiver by any means, but he is, he's at least like DJ Chark level, who they lost in week 2 last year, week 3?
Yeah.
With his injury.
Mm-hmm.
So they at least get a guy there who's a starting caliber receiver.
Yeah.
Zay Jones is decent depth. They still have Marvin Jones. The big thing, though, is Doug Peterson. The scheme should be better, as well as Travis Etienne out of the backfield. I think he's going to be very involved in the passing game. He could get like 50, 60 catches, get a couple touchdowns. Yeah. And I think he could play a big role in the passing game for the Jaguars. And that could be Trevor Lawrence's security blanket. They also brought in Evan Ingram. So if he's actually healthy, he's not a bad receiving option at the tight end position. So he does have a little bit to work with, more than last year, but it hasn't changed too much. It's really going to be about coaching and Trevor Lawrence's ability to take that jump in year 2. But his ceiling is still high based on as I said, the level of prospect that he was and the level of player that he is. And because of that ceiling, he's still getting slept on, because you can draft him in like the 14th, 15th round. And have him just sit on your bench. And if he breaks out and because he really could break out.
Yeah, he has way more breakout upside
than Jameis Winston.
Jameis Winston. Yeah.
Right. So with that in mind, he should still absolutely be drafted, and he goes undrafted in a lot of drafts that I've done. So because of that, he's getting slept on, but he's someone who, he could still suck in year 2. It's possible, but I'm willing to take that chance.
Now, I have a question. So last year he played in all 17 games, and his numbers actually were kind of surprising. He did have 602 attempts and only a 59% completion percentage, but I think that has more to do with the receiving core that he had than
the coaching. Also,
in the coaching,
their offense was horrible.
It was awful.
Absolutely horrible.
But he had 3,641 passing yards in his rookie season with 334 rushing yards. So the yardage was there for him. not elite, obviously. 4,500 to 5,000 would be elite. But he has a lot more passing yards than I thought he would. The big discrepancy is just 12 total passing touchdowns as a team. Does not really help. He throws 2% touchdown rate. That's pretty horrible.
Right.
I was going to say, I was trying to find his true completion percentage. It is 66.2, which ranked 32 in the league. So that's not even good. So it
was better than what
he needs to, as a player, take a step forward. But my question for you is, if you had to project numbers right now based on expectations of what you think he's going to be this year, what would you say he would get for passing yards and touchdowns and rushing yards this year?
I think he could throw 4,000 yards.
Okay.
I think his touchdowns should double. So you're looking at like 24 passing touchdowns. Yeah. Maybe like 15 interceptions, and then you see some rushing there too. So it's not anything that's crazy, but it's significant improvement from year one.
Yeah. And I like Rick said, I totally agree with this. He has this ability to take a leap, and for Jameis Winston, right? I feel like he's in a position right now where, like, if there's no offensive weapons around him, he becomes more of a fantasy liability than he does a good player. We're basing all of our sleeper opinion here for Jameis Winston on the fact that he might have some of the guys back, or he might have a better team around him, which he's going to if Michael Thomas plays and other things go well. For Trevor Lawrence, that's not walking through the door. You don't have Michael Thomas walking through the door. You don't have Alvin Kamara walking through the door. You don't have
Travis Etienne,
Chris Olave walking through the door. You don't have guys that are going to give Trevor Lawrence a opportunity to break out. So his breakout, it won't come from the players around him. But
it would be from him.
Question is Trevor Lawrence that guy enough where the comps are the Peyton Manning, right? He's supposed to be this guy. Number one overall pick, best player, high expectation. If he is this guy, should he not elevate his game to a point where it doesn't matter if Christian Kirk's his wide receiver or Devontae Adams is his wide receiver? Because
he should.
Aaron Rodgers is out there getting drafted as like the 7th quarterback off the board, and last time I checked, his wide receiver one is Alan Lazard.
He is still in year 2.
Fair.
So like he's still very young.
I mean, I'm not saying that this season's going to determine whether he's good.
But
or not,
he shouldn't be what he was last year. There should be significant improvement. It doesn't matter what is around him.
Exactly. So there's a chance, albeit thin, slim, that he breaks out and has a really great season. We're not projecting that. I think he's going to be a mid-range QB2, and he'll be streamable for a lot of games. I actually think what Mac Jones did last year, fantasy football-wise, is I think Trevor Lawrence can outdo that a little bit and be better. So he definitely just... I mean, I'm looking at some of these advanced metrics right now, and like interceptable passes, 50, number 1 in the NFL. 138 pressured throws, number 2 in the NFL.
Pressured throws, that's the poor offensive line.
Yeah. Danger plays, which is essentially any play in which the quarterback took an unnecessary risk or could have resulted in a turnover. 49, which is number 3 in the league. But he was also number 8 in the league in air yards. 4,600. So
they do. The whole scheme was, as I said, horrible.
So the question is, some of these would point to like interceptable passes, danger throws. Some of these would point to Trevor Lawrence. But then you could also say, with all the pressure, that he was experiencing on the season and the blitz packages and all that stuff, like, was that just him? Chucking the ball because he wanted to make a play because that's who he is, and then it just happened to be a bad play because
I watched a Trevor Lawrence film session for the first few weeks of the season, and there were like chunks of plays that there was literally no one open. The design was horrible, and basically the design was Trevor Lawrence go make something happen.
Yeah, see, if that's the case, then that's not good.
There were plays that were bad throws, but you could look at it to him being a rookie.
I mean, for crying out loud, Mac Jones had a better deep completion percentage than Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
And,
not good.
Yeah, not good. So a lot of things were not good for Trevor Lawrence, but I think where he's going right now, ADP on Underdog is 143. ADP on Sleeper's probably in the 160s.
Yep.
So I think he's definitely a guy that I would stash.
Absolutely. It's not like your draft. And I think that's why people don't like Trevor Lawrence, is because you're like, oh, you're drafting him to be your starter.
Right.
I don't want to start him week to week. You do not have to. You're drafting Trevor Lawrence for his upside.
Yep. 100%. So, all right, let's move to the next guy. Love Trevor Lawrence, though. He's my guy. I like all these quarterbacks in this class, with the exception of
Trey.
Well, I have this like really. I think he's going to be a breakout this year, and I'm confident in that if he performs. But there's always this like, the one quarterback in this class I doubted coming out was Trey Lance. And this is
but he doesn't even have to be good to be relevant for fantasy.
I know, seriously. So anyway, let's move on to the next guy and the final guy, and that is Zack Wilson. Rick, tell us why Zack Wilson is a sleeper. Because
oh my God! So first of all, I'll start
Justin
off with
Fields
this
is my
Zach
dude.
Wilson.
Take Mac Jones out of the equation, because Mac Jones is always going to be the dude over everyone. But Justin Fields is my dude. Zack Wilson is Rick's dude.
He is currently QB 23 on Fantasy Pros. I'm pretty sure on Sleeper he's like QB 24.
Yeah.
He never gets drafted. I've never seen him get drafted unless it's by me. Mm-hmm. He's completely undrafted. Everybody's out on Zack Wilson because of his rookie season. His rookie season was bad. But let me tell you about Zack Wilson.
Yeah.
First of all, he's one of the only rookie quarterbacks outside of Trey.
You had a script ready.
I didn't. This is just my love for the player. Outside of Trey Lance, the only rookie quarterback that is going to have the same offensive coordinator, and actually not even, because Trey Lance is gone, but Kyle Shanahan's pretty much the offensive coordinator. So the same offensive coordinator and head coach is going to be Zack Wilson. He's with the same coaching staff as he was as a rookie. So that is good. He's going to get another year in the same system. We obviously know about what the Jets did this offseason. A lot of people call him the offseason winner, which means absolutely nothing until you play the games. Yeah. But they did have a good offseason. They drafted Garrett Wilson 10th overall, who should be, a elite wide receiver in this league. I don't know if he will be year one, but he'll still be a solid piece. Elijah Moore is going into year 2. They still have Corey Davis in there as a depth piece. Braxton Berrios is, I think, got like $12 million a year. So they clearly see him having a role, and he's a decent slot player. They brought in CJ Uzomah from the Bengals, who was a Bengals offensive captain. They brought in, I think, Tyler Conklin from the Minnesota Vikings at tight end as well. So they have some pieces at tight end. They signed the guard from San Francisco, I forget his name, to be the highest paid guard in the NFL, or one of them.
The Jets made some moves, man.
And last year, when they drafted Zack Wilson, they drafted Elijah Vera Tucker, who was the top guard in last year's draft, who's getting another year. And he had a good rookie season, but he's only going to get better. Mekhi Beckman as well, who they took, I think, 2 years ago. So they have a young offensive line, but it's really developing nicely. The receiving core is developing nicely. They have tight ends. Literally, it's the opposite as Trevor Lawrence, because everything is in place for Zack Wilson. It's just going to be up to him. If he sucks, it's because he sucks this year.
And interestingly enough, it's hard for me to when a guy plays 13 games, he starts 13 games, right? And he gets 2,300 passing yards, 55% completion percentage, 185 rushing yards, and 9 touchdowns. That makes me so not want to believe in him as a breakout guy.
Right.
Those stats are.
Can I tell you what he did after he came back from the injury, though?
Enlighten.
So he was the number 1 quarterback on PFF for rookie quarterbacks. That was ahead of Mac Jones, ahead of Justin Fields, ahead of Trevor Lawrence, according to PFF. The first game, I don't know if he was, if they include that one, because he was not that good. So if you take that one out, he had just one interception in his last, I believe this is last 6 games, to go with 5 touchdowns. So 5 touchdowns and 1 interception. He also had a couple. What is it?
How many attempts per game did he have, though?
Passing attempts?
Yeah.
I don't know because this isn't loading, but it looks like it's about 30.
Okay, that's not bad.
He also had, which you might like this, he had 3 rushing touchdowns during that stretch.
I like myself some rushing touchdowns.
He had a total of 8 touchdowns to 1 interception at the end of the season in his last few games. So it kind of looked like it was maybe not clicking for him, but he definitely was more comfortable in the second half of the season, those last couple of games, than he was in the beginning of the season. He was still not on pace for anything crazy. It was 29.7 pass attempts, so I was very close. That was math in my head. So his completion percentage still wasn't great. He still had under 300 yards, but his touchdown interception ratio was much better, and his rushing numbers were very, very good. He was on pace for 453 rushing yards and 8 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to continue, but you could see an increase in his completion percentage and things like that coming with age. So he's got the talent on the offensive side of the ball. Yes, he had a bad rookie season, but so did Trevor Lawrence.
So did a lot of quarterbacks in NFL history.
Zack Wilson isn't the same prospect as Trevor Lawrence, but let's not forget he was still the 2nd overall pick. So it's not like he was still highly touted coming out of college. And I think if you look at their situations, Zack Wilson's situation is better than Trevor Lawrence's. So you have all those expectations for him for the team. And if Zack Wilson just plays better than he did last year, just play like an average quarterback compared to last year. If he has then if he has Mac Jones's numbers, he's going to be good because he's got more rushing than Mac Jones.
That's
so I think he's getting slept on big time. He's QB like 24 right now. I think he's going to at least be a top 20 quarterback with a high ceiling still. He still has the high ceiling like Trevor Lawrence and those other guys. People are just scared away because of how bad he was. And he's on the Jets. People are just he's on the Jets. So they throw him in the trash. But
so there's some the first couple weeks of the season were really not good.
Look at the Patriots games too.
The Patriots games were
they hurt. The first Patriot game hurt his stats so bad.
So the first, I think it was 5 weeks of the season here against Atlanta, Tennessee, Denver, New England, Carolina. 37, 33, 35, 34, 32 pass attempts. In this stretch of time, he was not good. He had an interception in game 1 against the Carolina Panthers. He had 4 interceptions against New England, 2 against Denver, 1 against Tennessee, and then 1 against Atlanta. And he was not producing in the slightest. In that stretch, he literally threw 9 interceptions and 4 touchdowns. So that is a very bad stretch. And I think the Jets realized, all right, we're relying too much on a kid to pull up his big boy pants on a terrible football team. So after that, it switched out from week 12 to 18. Like Rick said, his improvement, he had 24, 38, 42, 23, 22, 33, and 20 passes. So unless they needed him to chuck the ball, they kind of restricted how many pass attempts he did have. And like Rick said, I think that led to more improved play because he was able to think about things and take a step back. So I think Zack Wilson, I agree with you, Rick. I think he's going to be a really good player. I think he's a good sleeper pick this year because he's basically going undrafted. Not a lot of people are he's not on a lot of people's radar, but the Jets did make a ton of additions to their team. Whether they're good or not, I don't know. But what did you say?
We didn't even mention Breece Hall.
No, I know. So, I mean, the Jets are definitely, I think with the young talent that they have between Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson Elijah Moore, and now the offensive line becoming more improved, I don't know if this is going to translate immediately going into next year because it does take time for some of these guys to develop and get better. But there's some good things to see with Zack Wilson. I mean, last year he was middle of the pack in the NFL in deep pass percentage, which is pretty good. That's what he's good at. Yeah. But even his true completion percentage was 1 point higher than
Trevor Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence, thank you. And he had, he's 23 in danger plays, 26 in interceptable passes, 30th in pressured throws, which actually is one of the lowest in the league, probably because he didn't pass it. But yeah, and his touchdown rate was 2%. So we definitely got to see for him to break out, we would need a large step forward this year because like the plus side for Trey over there in San Francisco is that he didn't play a snap. Well, he played some snaps, but he wasn't relied upon as the starting quarterback. So he didn't have that pressure on his shoulders. He didn't have to force things. He didn't have to do what Zack Wilson did with the Jets. And because of that, I think Trey Lance will probably be really good this year and not have a rookie-like season because he, has done good things in practice and, in games and situations, similar to what Patrick Mahomes from year one when he didn't play or started one game to starting a full season and throwing 60 touchdowns. So, not that Trey Lance is going to do that, but I think for Zack Wilson, we've seen him play poorly. And so because of that, I feel like he needs to take, in order to break out and become that, he needs to take a massive step. And I don't know if the Jets, I know they made a lot of moves to improve the team. I just don't know if they made enough. So because of these things, that's why I wouldn't peg him as a breakout yet. And I think why a lot of people wouldn't peg him as a breakout. But I think adding him as a sleeper, you get the same appeal that you do with Trevor Lawrence, right? Where, hey, there's a chance this guy could break out, become a top 10, top 5 quarterback in fantasy football. But if he doesn't, he'll produce at a QB2 mid-range, top 15 guy probably value for the most part. And I think that's what you're going to get from Lawrence. I think that's what you're going to get from Zack Wilson. But there is some concerns with that. And I think for me, what's the risk? You're going in the 15th round. So it's not 14th, 15th round for this guy. Whereas Trey Lance hasn't started. Did he start a game?
Trey Lance?
Yeah,
I think he started one.
But a guy who
Cardinals,
hasn't played a ton, didn't look amazing when he did play, is going in the 9th round.
Yeah.
So, you talk about the value switching there between those two players, but 49ers are a way better football team. So,
right.
I do like Zach. I agree with Rick. I have my reservations a little bit more on Zack Wilson than I do any other quarterback because the Jets are the Jets. Best comparable option on Player Profiler for Zack Wilson is Johnny Manziel.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's not good. But I think he'll be fine. I love the prospect that is Zack Wilson, and I think it sucks that he went to the Jets. Just like it sucks that Trevor Lawrence went to the Jaguars.
I know. It's like, imagine how better that would have been if it was Patriots 49. Like you swap those landing spots like Patriots 49ers.
I know. But either way, there you go. There's 3 guys. Jameis the Famous, Trevor Lawrence, Zack Wilson, QB sleepers for the 2022 fantasy football season. Be sure to get these guys on your team. Snag them. Draft them, do whatever you want. Next week, we're moving into some different content, moving away from sleepers, doing more mock drafts. We'll see you then.
See you.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.